A number of people are asking, what about public opinion?
Yeah, sure. That's not a problem. I think that, one of the things that happens around this notion of how do we deal with public opinion is that it takes place in a larger context where what we're seeing is actually major support for a number of similar groups who have taken strong strike votes. So, for example, at UOIT, that's associated with Durham College, they had a 90% strike vote. Transit workers up in Thunder Bay, 96% strike vote. What you're looking at there are actually not a ridiculous sort of like backlash around the fact that you took a strong strike vote, because what it's really about is that those workers are talking. They're one, you're members of the public, and two, you know best how to talk to people in your community about what we're doing here. When we're looking at the kinds of issues that we're taking a strike vote on, this may be the only time in my career at a college where we will not be arguing about compensation in any way, shape, or form. The legislation imposed by that concessionary legislation imposed by the Ford government guarantees that. We are actually effectively taking an over 3% pay cut. We're not arguing that because we can't. So we are focused strictly on time to support our students. We're talking about literally 1.8 minutes per week per student, right? That's what the CEC isn't backing down on. We're talking about a system that offers degrees in which 11 of our colleges don't have academic librarians. We're talking about at least 2 colleges that have fully outsourced their counseling services in the middle of a mental health crisis for students. And we are talking about taking every step we can to avoid a strike. And that means work to rule. And work to rule is not going to start with, incredible escalations. What we're looking at in terms of work to rule is it's going to start in the locals. It's going to build pressure on the administrators. And you're looking at things that are completely reasonable. And it's also bringing students along with you. And I'm not saying this because I was on the team in 2017. I'm saying this because it's true. It is an absolute falsehood that we made no gains in 2017. Indeed, we made one of the greatest gains that very few people have had the ability to exercise because the colleges are scared of it. And that gain is academic freedom. And that is the right to share information and be critical of your college is included in that. And that is of crucial importance in this round of bargaining. And I will not say that this applies equally for partial load faculty. I know that you have a different situation that's on the go, but for full-time faculty, it doubles our responsibility for making sure that we share information about our working conditions and our colleagues' working conditions with our students. It means that we take responsibility for sharing this with the public. Communications will ramp up after the strike vote because that's when people pay attention. But as we said during the presentation, there is not going to be a work stoppage over the holidays. And you know what's going to happen on the 13th? Is that the CEC is going to come out and they're going to say, look at all these positive things we're giving you. We're not imposing anything draconian. This is ridiculous. The bargaining team's gone mad. We're not going to do anything bad to you. Yet. The answer is yet. Because I'll tell you, if their workload committee goes in with no implementation, you can forget getting anything on workload in this contract, in the next contract, and in many contracts down the road, right? And what they've already built in is language that ensures two-tiering, that ensures that partial load workload equity is not going to be addressed, that ensures that counselors and librarians aren't going to get a fair shake because they'll be in charge of that committee. They have no dispute resolution mechanism in there, and they're talking about a chair that is going to be a management chair who then gets to decide all of the recommendations that go forward, whether or not they're implemented. Now, these are the same group of people who've said that 1.8 minutes per student per week is not a demand that they could ever reach a settlement on. They've said that contracting out of counselor work, nope, that's not good enough to settle on. So let's talk about whether we trust that those committees under management, complete management control, are actually going to produce the changes that you say you need. To the answer of, what do we do right now? We are in a stark position. We are absolutely in a stark position. And the only leverage that we have at the table is if we have a strong strike mandate, period. And it's not because we want to go out on strike. We will continue to do everything to try and avoid that And when I say everything, I mean we are looking at every possible option. The invitation for voluntary binding interest arbitration, in other words, where an arbitrator can look at both sides equally and pick the best from each one, that remains on the table, and that will remain on the table. The CEC, all they have to do is agree to interest arbitration. Final offer selection means you pick one side or the other entirely. It's just win-lose. That's a 50-50 shot. And frankly, as the chair of this team, I'm not willing to take that gamble with 15,000 people's working conditions, period. So when we're talking about the public opinion, we're talking about each of us has a role to play in talking to everyone around us about why we're there. Everyone understands the gig economy. 75% of college workers, faculty, are gig workers. They're gig workers. That's not hard to figure out. We get 5 minutes per week to grade a student at the maximum. That's not hard for people to wrap their heads around. That it's better to have counselors on site rather than remote, working with students in their communities. It's a no-brainer.